All right. Let's see. I think we might be live. I think we might be live. What's going on, people? Quick little work break. Get caught back up on what's been going on. Uh, and I don't even remember where we left off at before. I can say what's going on is somebody in the building today. So let's see what's been going on. Still been working. Both gigs, you know. It got a little crazy there for a little bit, but we holding it together over here. Uh, Tim, what's going on, man? Teamwork makes the dream work. You're right about that, brother. You are right about that. Another lovely day there in Hawaii. I take it. Starting to cool down over here in Vegas, man. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Let's see. I don't even remember what we talked about last time or what I need to update y'all on. Working on a elusive problem at work. Nice, cool trade wins always out there, man. Working on an elusive problem at work. There's a failure in the application. It's a silent failure though, where there's no blow up, but the application locks up. So it's one of those where you really got to go deep and start kind of pulling back the layers on stuff to find out, piece by piece, where a problem or issue is. So it really tests your, it really gets to test your troubleshooting skills. So I'm pulling back through it. It's one of those that you really work your brain on, and it can frustrate you and all of that while you're going through it, but when you're done, it really makes you feel accomplished. So we'll see how that goes. On the other side, I'm writing a bunch of tests for the other gig. How long does that take to do? That's the question, man. That's the question. It could be something. It all just depends on how long it takes you to find it. You kind of go through different steps and different theories of what it could be, and it could be something that takes you an hour, or it could be something that takes you a week. Hopefully, it doesn't take you a week. And usually, it's somewhere in between there. A few hours, better part of a day, or maybe 2 days. I just picked it up today, and it was rated at 2 days, estimated at 2 days to fix. So I kind of got the rest of today and all day tomorrow to get it figured out and get it done. But we'll see if we can't get that fleshed out over there. Takes me a little bit longer, of course, because I've got dual duties, so I can't just 100% zone in and spend days and days over here because I'm writing code over here as well. So it's always a balancing act for me. I spend X amount of time on the first gig and then X amount of time on the second gig. So I kind of gotta block it up. But I go to bed a lot of times thinking about a problem that I'm stuck on. And you'll be amazed at how many times you'll wake up with the answer. That's crazy and nuts. I've dreamed about code before, dreamed about problems, and came up with solutions in my dreams. And was super excited when I woke up the next morning to go try and implement those fixes. But that's weird geeky stuff. I guess if you're into your work like that. Yeah, I know, coding in your sleep. It's pretty nuts, but that does happen sometimes. What else has been going on? So the real estate thing, man, I actually shot a video, but I haven't edited it and put it up yet. About purchasing the property back home. Yep, coding is my drug for now. This little room that I'm in, man, I spend 12 hours a day in this little box, Uh, but it's my comfort zone at the same time. Even on days when I'm not working, I'll come in here and hang out. So I dig it. It's my little. I always think of the Charlie Brown guy that carried the blanket around, his little comfort blanket. It's kind of like that for me. Um, but man, banks down in rural country, southern Mississippi. Uh, paint some codes on the wall. I don't know if my lady will let me get that crazy with it, man. We spent a pretty penny getting these walls painted the gray color that they are. I don't think she let me put some crazy stuff on the wall, even though it's my office and, and my checkbook. But we all know who runs things. Um, yeah, Mississippi, man. So what I found out, this is the naivete of me, is when you're dealing with small, rural, southern, places like that, Mississippi, Alabama, etc., and you're dealing with banking and financing, you run into things being done in an old way. And what I mean by that is um, I called every bank in the little town that I'm, looking to purchase property in and around. And you cannot open a bank account in any of those banks without physically, yep, happy wife, happy life. Uh, you can't open a bank account down there without physically walking into the branch. And, that kind of blew my mind for a bit because I've been a member of, I have Air Force background, military background. So I've had a USAA account for a long time. I've got a Navy Federal credit union account. I've got a simple bank account. All of those are banks that don't even have branches. So you do everything online, and even the other banks that's here in town, all the big players, your Wells Fargo's, your Bank of America's, you know, all of those, Chase Bank, all of that, you can open accounts online. There's no need to go into a branch or anything like that. But back in old Southern Mississippi, those local branches there's Bank of Jones County and Community Bank of Mississippi and Trustmark Bank and all these things. You can't open an account. They even have, one of them had sign up for a bank account online. I got all excited and I clicked on the link and went there and tried to do it. And all it really does is it allows you to print out the forms online. Or fill them out online, but you still got to print them out and physically walk them into the branch and hand them to the people. I'm like, that's not signing up online, man. That's they should have renamed it to say, print out your application forms online, but you still got to walk into the branch to open the account. So I can't even get an account open. So the plan was open a bank account with a local bank down there, right? And then form a relationship with that bank, i.e., let them see the money's going into the account and everything, and they get to figure, okay, this is, what type of banking person that you are, and then you go hit them asking for money. Basically, it's not just knocking on the door like, hey, can I get a mortgage? Can I get money for a house? You've kind of built that relationship, and they can go back and review, because they do that. If you go to a bank and ask, if you have a banking relationship with them, they will go back and review your bank account, and see what type of banking person you were. Was your account always low? What was your average 90-day balance? All that stuff. Was it low? Did you ever overdraft your account? Was it ever in the negative? Did you, all that stuff like that. So it's nice to have a good relationship with them, especially if you keep a very high balance in those accounts. It tends to bode well for you when it comes to other banking decisions, especially on banks on that small of a level. You have people that are in very close vicinities and they can talk back and forth to each other, and you know, your bank tellers can talk to the bankers who talk to the long dock people, and the underwriters can all be in the same building type thing and making decisions. Um, and it's definitely that feel, because when I call through and talk to one lady, one of the mortgage bankers, you know, it went back to that old hometown, who you know, type thing. First, I could tell from her voice she was a little standoffish and didn't necessarily want to get really deep in my answers and everything. She wasn't sure that I was a good candidate for a mortgage, and she wanted to know, you know, what I made, what my income is, and you know, it instantly goes to that. Well, who are you? You know, all this stuff, and they'll throw something out there like, you know, something about the money, like, you know, typically requires 20% down, and then they just wait, like, because they expect for people to be like, oh, I actually need money to give you money. Okay, never mind. And I'm like, okay, whatever she threw at me, I'm like, okay, that's I know the process, lady. I got money, plenty of it. You know, I'm calling to see what you need in order to grant a mortgage. You know, so it was one of those type things. But once I dropped it, you know, I'm from so, and I went to so Elementary before they closed that down and consolidated them all in. And I graduated from West Jones High School and all this stuff. And the year that I graduated, oh, my son graduated from West Jones around that same time. You remember so and so? And I'm like, yeah, I remember so and so. You got to be kidding me. And yeah, he married this girl so and so. Oh, I went to school with her too. And then it started to flow, and it's that whole, you know, small town, Southern Mississippi. Got to know, you know, they got to feel comfortable with you and know your type thing. And then once that happened, it started flowing. And she was like, oh, well, I'm going to call you. And we'll set up and do an application over the phone and all this other stuff. So, but that's been my journey and progress with that whole thing. There's only like one bank that I kind of talked to. I recorded a couple of conversations when I talked to the ladies down there, just to play them. So I'm going to do a video, and I'm going to put the audio in at the beginning of it and let you hear kind of the conversation I had with her, and how, you know, they don't do online applications down there. You need to physically walk in. And me being on the other side of the country, that's kind of a problem and an issue. But anyway, that whole process is coming along. So I'm trying to remember to record as much of it as I can. I pull out my recorder. So I got this, who makes it? Zoom H4n. I don't know if you can see that. Zoom makes it H4n. It's a little field recorder. It's got 2 XLR on the bottoms and records up here at the top. It takes a little SD card. There's a little SD card slot. So whenever I get on a phone call, I usually pull this thing out and hit record. There's an SD card reader right there. You can pop that out, pop it in your computer. I'll pick this thing out and I hit record, and I'm recording, you know, the phone conversation. I'll put the phone on speaker and I record it so that I get it, so I can use it in future videos. So I've got a couple of those things called, or even I record a lot of stuff just for my own records. Whenever I'm calling and I got some kind of problem or issue with a company or something, I pull this bad boy out. I record it. I record the conversation with the customer service person. So if I have any issues, I can go back and when I get escalated up to the manager level, I can say that's not what your person told me, and I have them record it. So, boom, boom. But that's kind of the deal. Let's see. Yo, let's holla at Ace the Gamer. What's going on? If you're still in the building, do you have time for a question or two as far as knowledge needed for a junior web developer position? I do. What's going on, Ace the Gamer? Just ask your question. I'll go ahead and get your question answered. Small time, good old boy system. Yeah, it is like that, man, down there. And I forget because I've been gone. I haven't lived down there in over 18 years. So I you know, I lose the accent even. At least my wife says, until I get on the phone with some of my family and friends from back home, and then it starts to come back out. How you got that little southern twang going on. But so when I call down there, a lot of people are standoffish because I sound like city folk to them and not country folk. People always have a basic knowledge of HTML and CSS. What would be considered basic knowledge creating a website? That's a good question. Also, how much JavaScript do I need to know? Well, it depends on what you want to do, Ace the Gamer. If you're trying to get into the web development game, then you need to be solid in all three of those. That's the basic foundation for the web: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML is the structure of your web page. The CSS controls the presentation. How does it look? And then JavaScript makes it interactive. So when you click on things, other things happen, and you can talk back and forth with the web server using JavaScript and XHR requests. Define solid. Tell me what you're trying to. What's your end goal? Are you trying to be a web developer? Because that's gonna. If you're not trying to be a web developer and you wanted to do something else, that's gonna vary what level of solid is. You know what I'm saying? If you really want to do, I don't know, phone development or something like that, or systems development or game development, then the level of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript you need to know is going to be minimal. If you're trying to go and be a web developer, then you need to be solid in it. And by solid, I mean that's going to be your bread and butter. My end goal is to become a junior web developer and go up the ladder, I suppose. Okay. If you want to get your foot in at the first job, then yeah, you need to be able to build a website, on your own from scratch. If you can write out the HTML, do the CSS to make it look pretty, and add the JavaScript to make it interactive, then that's the level that you need to be at. You need to understand forms, because every website has a login form at the minimum, where you put in a username and a password, how to use JavaScript to be able to do form validation, meaning if they're supposed to put in an email address and a password, how to be able to do a regex check on that email address and say, put up an error if it's wrong and says, hey, you did not input a valid email address. Email address must have, this many characters before an @ symbol and end with whatever, .com. Same thing for a password. If you got password must be 8 characters long and must include uppercase or whatever. That's all JavaScript stuff on the front end. When you put in a password and it spits out an error at you and says password must be this and this and have a special character and an uppercase, lowercase, and one number, that's JavaScript doing a regex check, and you're not passing that regex check. And regex check, regular expression is what regex stands for. It's not passing a regular expression check, and then it's triggering a error message to show on the screen. So you need to be able to, kind of navigate around stuff like that. And once you got your head around doing that kind of stuff, you can pretty much start flowing from there. So that means you'll have a pretty solid grasp of at least the basic fundamentals of JavaScript. Make sure your form looks pretty. If you're doing the showing and hiding of those different error messages, and when they come up, if you take the input box, take the border around it, turn it to red, meaning there's an error, that's working on your CSS skills to conditionally show, add a class or remove a class, all that type of stuff. So that means some CSS, and obviously you knew the HTML enough to be able to code up that form at least. So that gives you at least something to talk about in a job interview. If you want to take it to the next step, have that form. Well, that's kind of getting advanced if you're not writing the backend. If you get really deep into JavaScript, learn a little node so you can spin up a little web server and have your front end JavaScript form, submit a request to your web server, have that web server do the check, and then send you a success or a failure response, and then you act accordingly on the front end form, then if you can display that like in a job interview and be able to articulate it well, that you understand each different part of that, you golden, man. All right, let's go back and see if I can get some of your other questions. All right, define solid end goal is that. That's it. I still Google stuff. I still Google a lot of stuff. Is that okay? Of course that's okay. Every developer Google stuff. If they say they don't, they're lying. No developer can keep you shouldn't even keep knowledge in your head that is easily Googled, or you can easily get your hands onto that information. You know, you keep core foundational concepts in your head on how to program, and then all of the things on the outside, you can go to Google and say, I forget how to do it. There's still parts of Angular, and I've been doing Angular for years. There's still things that I do in Angular that I still have to go check on how to do it, because you want to make sure the syntax is right and all of that stuff, and make sure the best practice hasn't been updated or something like that. So you never have to feel bad about using Google. I learned HTML and CSS in 2 weeks. Basic knowledge, as in enough to make a website. How long do you think it may take to learn JavaScript? I learned HTML and CSS in 2 weeks. That's pretty good, 2 weeks. How long it take to learn JavaScript? JavaScript's probably going to take you longer than HTML and CSS, simply because JavaScript is an actual programming language, whereas HTML and CSS are more markup languages. There's not a lot of logic that you have to learn for HTML and CSS. CSS has a minimal amount of logic. You can do some calculation functions and stuff like that. If you're getting into Sass or some of these CSS preprocessors, Sass, Less, Stylus, if you've heard of those, then they have a concept of having functions in them for CSS. But regular plain old CSS, you're kind of just marking up style sheets, but it's not actual code. JavaScript is an actual programming language. Some people will argue with that, but it's true. It's a real programming language where you have conditionals, like if statements, if this then that. You have for loops in it. So as long as this condition is true, do this work until it's not true, and then stop and continue on with the code. Like, those core programming concepts are in JavaScript. So a lot of times it takes people a while to get their head wrapped around those concepts and when to use them, when not to use them. So it's going to take you a while to get your head around it first, to where you can get around in JavaScript, and then it's a whole nother journey to get good at JavaScript, and a whole nother journey to go from good to great at JavaScript, or considering yourself to be a JavaScript expert and really going and finding out, kind of lifting the hood and looking at how JavaScript works at its core, and really being good at JavaScript problems. So, do I need a website before applying? It's always a good thing. I mean, if you want to be a web developer, it is a very good thing to have your own website. Like, I mean, you are in essence applying to build web applications for people, and the fact that you don't even have a basic website for yourself can look bad. I say that now without me. I think there's an old website floating around out there somewhere for me, but it ain't nothing that I've touched in years. So I'm sure it looks horrible. Can you do it without having a website? Yeah. Yes, you can. Will it help you if you don't have a lot of other things going for you? Then yes, it will. If I was starting out again, I would definitely have my own website, Let's see. Sorry if I asked too many questions. That's the only reason I'm on here. Don't feel sorry for asking questions. I can Google doing an interview project. Usually, no, you cannot. Ace. The interview, uh, boy, that's a whole nother video is interview stuff. Um, because interviews don't always match the real life, what you're going to be doing type thing. And those are the interviews that I disagree with, where they have you doing stuff like, it's almost like brain teasers and stuff, you know? Um, but you typically don't have access to a computer even during the interview process. Um, they're going to be asking you just general knowledge questions, usually for junior developer positions. You're going to be asked a bunch of general knowledge questions that you just have to know and answer, or be honest that you are not familiar with that concept, but you would love to research it and get back to them on that. Um, or you'll be asked to program or write some code. And that code is usually, if you're doing a face to face interview, you're usually going to have to write that out on like a whiteboard, which is terrifying, because you forget how much you rely on your editor, on your code editor that you use to write code in, especially if you use a fully fledged IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. It's like big programs that you write your code in. I use JetBrains IntelliJ program, for example, and it does all kinds of stuff for me. Like when I'm writing code, it's highlighting stuff that's wrong, or if I'm trying to use the wrong type in the wrong place, it's yelling at me, hey, you can't do that here, you can't do that there, you missed the semicolon over here, just all this stuff. It's always reminding me and helping me shape my code. When you pull all that back, you know, it kind of makes you blank out for a minute. If you're used to writing code with an editor, you haven't really started writing code yet, so you won't be missing anything. But once you get used to a coding editor and they pull that away from you and hand you a dry erase marker and give you a whiteboard and say, here's the problem, write code and how you would solve this problem in code on this whiteboard. It's kind of like deer in the headlights thing. But I'm a bigger fan of code interviews where where you do like a phone interview first, and then they send you a coding challenge and allow you X amount of time. You kind of have a time limit when they send it to you to get it turned back into them, and you get to do it on your own machine. And you can at that point you can Google problems that you run into because you're doing it at home or in your own time, not right there in front of somebody. You send that back in, and then they'll use that to judge if we even want to bring you in to talk to you, type thing. And then you would go through some other processes like the general knowledge stuff and whiteboarding stuff. Love the honest value you're dropping. Appreciate it. Nervous because I plan on applying to jobs at the end of December. All applications state need like a year or two of experience along with a lot of other stuff. Don't worry about what the job descriptions say. I have never hit all the points on any job description that I've ever applied for or gotten. So don't feel like you have to, if you can't check all the boxes on what the requirements are, that they're not going to bring you in and talk to you or hire you even. Because the fact of the matter is that there's a lack of developers, especially fully qualified developers on one side of things. On the other side of things, a lot of times the person that's writing the job description is a recruiter or internal recruiter, and they don't necessarily know, a lot of them don't even necessarily know what the things they're writing are. I ran into that where I talked to a recruiter and I would ask them a question about something that they had put on the job description, like a certain technology, and they'd be like, yeah, I just talked to John who is hired for the job, and that's just what he told me. Like, they have no clue. They're just writing stuff and putting it on the job description, to get something done. So don't let that stop you from from applying for a job. I've applied for jobs that's way over my head, man, and I've gotten stuff that were way over my head, kind of called my bluff too. So you got to be ready for that. Don't lie on your stuff. But if there's gray area, apply. Thanks for the gems, of course. Have you ever tried Android or iOS programming? I have. Journey, is it? Journey? I don't know how to pronounce it. Um, but I do recognize you for being in the building. I have done some iOS stuff using Swift. So I started taking tutorials using Swift for iOS on Team Treehouse, which you don't know. If you don't know my backstory, that's kind of where uh, my beginning into the programming foray started at, was Team Treehouse, and they have some Swift stuff on there, and I started doing that. Started at doing the Objective C stuff first because that's the original iPhone language, and then Swift dropped in the middle of that, and then I switched over to the Swift track and started picking up Swift. So it's cool stuff. I haven't finished or published my own phone application yet. Written in a native phone language, but that's definitely something that's on my list of things to do. So time is pretty tight for me right now though with the 2 gigs going, so I don't have a lot of side time or free programming time to be able to kind of work on those side projects, which is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I semi fear a little bit because I don't want to get so busy doing what I'm doing that I don't keep progressing and exploring as a developer. I never want to follow. I see developers that I've worked with that's been, programming for 15, 20, 30 years, some of them, and you can see where they fell into a groove at their current job, and they stop progressing. They never took the time to learn new technologies that were coming out and new, language concepts that were coming out. They only learned what they needed for their job, to get that paycheck every 2 weeks or whatever it may be. And all the other stuff that's going, because the development community is constantly evolving and growing, but they stayed with these blinders on. And then if something happens at that job, the company gets sold, new management comes in, and they start eliminating positions, or we're going to pivot and take the company in a different direction, and we're not, using this new technology. Either A, if they stay on, they fight against any technology changes because they don't know the new stuff, or B, they end up getting themselves out of a job or leaving because they don't want to change or they don't know the new technology that's coming on. So you never want to be that type of developer that puts blinders on and I just know what I need to know for work. So I'm cognizant of that to stay active in what's going on in the community. Any projects, ideas to put on my website for getting a junior dev position? That's always a tough one. Everybody always has problems and issues with that. You would think people that are not developers always think, oh, you can write code, you can make anything. But a lot of times the people that write the code are not necessarily the people that have the ideas. So a lot of times there's a disconnect. You have a person who could literally build whatever they wanted to build, but that they're usually not the person that has the ideas, and the person that has the ideas is usually can't code his ideas. It's really rare. Sometimes you find people who can code and have the ideas, but that's not always, that's usually not the case. And the tough part is when you're a developer, you're running up against a lot of people that have ideas. Oh, I literally had it on a live that I was watching of somebody else's, and I mentioned I was a developer, and somebody reached out like, oh, I got this idea that's going to change the world. Nobody's thought of it. And I told him, look, man, I said, I have to be honest with you. If you got an idea, it's really got to be good, because a lot of people want you to take their world-changing idea and run with it and code it up for them, but they don't have no money to pay you. And at the end of the day, my mortgage gets paid with money, not hopes and dreams of a world-changing idea, And with what I'm doing now, juggling too, I don't have time to do a side project where I'm working on your wild, crazy idea, Yeah, I mean, that's just real talk. But you're going to get that when you become a developer. Not everybody, but a lot of people that you tell you're a developer is going to hit you up and want you to do work on their idea because they can't code, you can code, they have the idea, and they want free work to get this idea off the ground, but they ain't got no money to pay you. You know, that's kind of that whole game, and I tend to stay away from that. I'll listen to people, you know, with their idea thing, and if it's something that really like blows my mind, like, wow, yeah, that's a good idea, and I can code that up, maybe, but that's a slim chance to none. To take even more time, the little time I have, I spend with my family and not chasing wild ideas. So I always backspace when the Sublime auto puts info in and put it in myself due to the fact I need to learn. Yep, I know what you mean. Trying to help you out, like the tags and stuff. Yep. Do you think my military background will help me get the job? That can be a factor in some places. For example, the company I work with, Company A, out of A and B, does government contracting. They bid on government contracts in Washington, D.C., and they win government contracts. One of the things in the government contracting space is they like for you to either be a minority or to be a veteran, and they have a veteran's preference. And if you are a veteran-owned company, it looks even better if you have hired a lot of veterans. So a lot of times companies like that will look to hire veterans because it looks better for them to be able to win even more government contracts and stuff. And government contracts, that's a whole nother thing. I actually paid like $500, $550 or something to take a government contracting course from this lady that specializes in doing nothing but helping you get government contracts. And that's a whole nother world that kind of blew my mind as well, because people think government contracts, they think big Washington, D.C., bidding on these, you know, super big, you know, $billion government contract. But government contracts can be as small as, you know, all the way down to your local city and county levels, where even the city that you're living in, or the township or the county that you're in, 9 times out of 10 has a website. And in order to be able to build that website, you have to be in the government contracting system, listed as a contractor, and you can bid on and possibly win those contracts to be able to build a website for your city or your county or your whatever it is, you know. And I never thought that to come down to that level. I always thought at a like national level. But she said there's state contracts, there's county contracts, there's city contracts, there's, you know, all these things that are part of quote unquote government that you could win these things on. And she said, for you, and she was talking to me, you are a minority, and you're prior military, and you're a disabled veteran as well. So there are contracts out there that are slotted for each of those. There are minority preference contracts, there are veteran preference contracts, and there are disabled veterans preference contracts. So that can definitely be a factor. So just things to think about down the road as you get further along in your career. If you want to freelance or maybe start doing your own business thing, keep that type of stuff in mind. So cool. You work for 2 different companies. I do currently. If you watch some of my videos leading up to this live, you'll see the progression, where I had a really good job already, you know, making really good money, at least for me and my living situation. And then I picked up a second gig. I picked up a second gig that still pays really good money as well. But I didn't have to be as stringent and really push for the maximum that I could have got on that one, because it's all extra money. So for me, I work job A, the main gig, you know, that I want to make sure everything is good at job A. And then job B is a small startup, like 6 people altogether. There was only one developer that was programming it. He was a Java guy. And he wrote an Angular app, and I believe he said this is his first large-scale Angular application. So it was interesting when I dove into it, because with him not doing a lot of Angular applications in the past, and coming from a Java background, he wrote the application in what felt comfortable for him, in a style that felt comfortable for him, which was a Java based style. So um, when you open our Angular application, it's almost imperceptible from a Java application, which does not necessarily follow. Angular has this thing called a style guide, um, which gives you a convention to follow when you're writing an Angular application, right? All the way down to where you place your methods, after your properties, and public versus private versus protected, and the whole order of how your component class is set up is all listed out in the style guide. And the application, when I joined in with his, was like totally, it was all over the place. There was stuff, all you couldn't find anything in a file. You had to scroll through. It made perfect sense to him because he wrote it. He knows where everything's at because he wrote it. It's in the style that he's familiar with from writing Java applications. I don't have a Java background. I have an Angular background, and I've gone between different projects that were written with the same Angular style guide, and you can go you can go between one and the other very quickly because everything was in the same place in each project. I knew if I was looking for a getter or a setter, it's at the bottom of the component file. I knew if I'm looking for the public properties of the class, to look at the top of the file right after the class is defined. And in the other files, stuff was everywhere, and I'm scrolling, trying to find and trying to trace what does what, and this connects to this, how, and it takes the learning curve and ramps it up for jumping onto a new project if you don't follow some type of style guide. So the biggest bulk of thing I've been doing there is, as I go into a file, I will try to rearrange it and make it all the same, so that eventually the entire project all the files will look the same, and you'll be able to go and find stuff easily and stuff like that, and converting it to use some other state management technologies like NGRX and Redux, and one-way data flow stuff, which is all stuff that you'll get into when you get really deep in the JavaScript world and start learning these front-end frameworks like React and Ember and Angular. I worked the second job from home as well, so I got lucked out to be able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to pick up a second job if I didn't already work remote with the first job, and I only look for other remote opportunities. So I think I mentioned on the last live, I actually got presented with an opportunity here in Vegas that was that kind of blew my mind. It was for Statius Casinos. They were looking for an Angular guy that knew Angular well, and they were offering between $80 and $85 an hour for the position, which is a lot of money here in Vegas. You're talking about $160,000 gross. You know what I'm saying? And Nevada doesn't have state taxes, so you're only paying federal taxes on that. Still a lot of taxes. You're in a higher tax bracket up there. Trust me, because I'm in that tax bracket right now. But I'm having to work two jobs. The issue with me is my current situation. If I was only working at the one gig, then we're talking about over a $40,000 difference. So I might have had to take that, even though it's not remote. That was the big thing. It's not remote. I have to go into the office every day. It is on my side of town. It's about a 20-minute drive, 15 to 20-minute drive from where I live at now. But it's hard when I can walk right downstairs and be in my office in 30 seconds and be to work. To give that up and to have to get up every morning and get dressed and drive 20 minutes, go to the office, and you give up that flexibility, and that flexibility is huge for me. To be able to take a lunch when I'm ready, take a lunch. If I gotta go pick up my kids from school because my wife got sick the other day. I had to pick the kids up. No big deal. You know what I'm saying? I'm not tied down to a location and having to go tap my boss on the shoulder. Hey, boss, I gotta. My wife's sick. She asked if I can get the kid. I ain't gotta do none of that. I just go. And as long as I get my work done on time in the time frame that I'm supposed to get it done in, I'm good. So even for most people, if you say I'm gonna give you a $40,000 raise, they would knock everything out of the way trying to get to it, but it's literally something I would have had to have thought about. But with the situation that I'm in, working the two jobs, the pay is more than what that one job would be, and I couldn't work two jobs if I had that one job. So I would, in essence, end up taking a pay cut to take that one job. Of course, my wife thinks I think from a place of abundance. She thinks from a place of scarcity. That's just the differences in us. So she's like, you should have took that job, because what happens if you end up losing the second job you got now? Then we fall all the way back down to the one job, which is less money than what the station's job would have been. And I'm like, she's thinking in a what if, worst case scenario thing. And I'm thinking, but yeah, you're telling me to give up 60 grand today for what might happen in the future at some point. So it's crazy how me and her have these conversations, and how she looks at things from a place of lack and not having, and me looking at it from the opposite end. I'm like, no, I'm not giving up a bunch of money to give up remote and all this stuff. And anyway, that's crazy stuff. I think her and I are going to start our channel soon. I think that'll be pretty funny, because we are the epitome of opposites. So is it common that finding a second job you can work from home? Oh, all right. Let me tell you about working from home. Working from home, when I came into the gig, I thought you'd be able to get a work from home job pretty easily. But for me, what I found out is that working from home is not going to happen early in your programming career. As a junior developer, people are not going to take the chance on you as a junior dev working from home, and you'll find that most of the work from home positions will specify senior level developer, and that used to frustrate the shit out of me when I was a junior dev, because I wanted to work from home. But I get it now, because when you're here and you're home, you have no help. You have to be a master of figuring stuff out. Yeah, you got to know your stuff. You have to be the master of that, of Google and Stack Overflow, and using whatever resources you can get your hands on to figure out a problem. Like the problem that I'm working on now with job number 1. I don't know if you were on at the beginning. I'm working on a really tough problem where the application is freezing and locking up, but I'm getting no errors. If you open up the console, there's no console errors. The app's not spitting out any or throwing any errors. It's just locking up. So now I have no clues as to what could be going on. So I have to use all the knowledge that I can gather and all the resources to start walking through this code and pulling back every layer and checking that layer. Is everything good here? Running the code, looking at what the variables are, making sure everything's good. Okay, that's good. Pull back the next layer. And I got to work my way through this thing all by myself. I don't have any other brains or eyes, or can't tap on my fellow coworker's shoulder and be like, hey man, can you take a look at this and see if you see anything that I'm missing? Like, you got to be able to do it all on your own. And that usually requires somebody that's been doing this for a while, that's seen a lot of the problems that you can run into when you're programming. So, GC, what's going on? Caught you live again. I've been thinking about you a lot, man. I've been watching your lives too. I've been quiet though. I've been following back and just watching, sometimes I catch them on a replay. Sometimes I catch you live, but I'll fall back and just, watch you do your thing, man. That's cool. Golden Child in the building, y'all. So the guy that got me started doing these things. Go check out his channel. Click on it. Click on his face there, bro. If you want to know about entrepreneurship, the other side of the stuff that I talk about here that's not code. You know, when I start talking about the real estate thing and business stuff, his channel will hit that dead on the mark for you because he comes from that background of kind of being a jack of all trades when it comes to entrepreneurship. And if you listen to his story, it's the quintessential pull yourself up by your own bootstraps type deal. So if you want some motivation about getting off your butt and making it happen for yourself, go check out his channel and his story and subscribe. It's really cool channel, really cool story. He provides some great content and motivational content that'll really give you a kick in the butt. So check him out, GC. I call him GC, Golden Child. Yeah. Faded, what's going on, man? Hadn't seen you in a minute. Cool. Hey, I appreciate it. Appreciate it, GC, man. You always motivate me. I be sitting here chilling, being lazy, ain't shot no. I even shoot video. I shoot videos, but I ain't post them up. And I'm sitting here being lazy, working, and then I get the little notification sliding in at the top of the screen. Golden Child is live, and I'm like, I go watch it, and I'm like, he killing me, man. He killing me. So then that gets me up, and I gotta let me at least do a live. Let me do something, shoot a little something, post a little something up. So I appreciate you, man, for giving me inspiration to get off my butt and stop being lazy and get these videos up. So I dig it, and then I do it. And I realize how much I enjoy doing it. I come in and having dialogue like I'm having with Aces. He's asking questions. I'm getting to answer some good questions, and drop some knowledge. And then I feel bad for not doing it more often. So I appreciate it. For sure, Aces. For sure. So that's it, man. I'm at the tail end of this, though. I wanted to take a quick break working on this thing. Oh, for sure, man. I wouldn't mind meeting Miss GC. She seems like fun, man. All I can think of is her chasing you in that park with that bat. Miss Harley Quinn. She seemed like fun, man. So that'll be cool if y'all roll through. Make sure you hit me up. You come to Vegas. Oh, that's for anybody that's on the stream. If you come through Vegas, hit me up. And yeah, Harley Quinn. Hit me up, and I see if we can connect. And I love to meet y'all if you come through town. So, what should I learn after JavaScript? Also, Aces, I say after JavaScript to pick you up a good backend language. If you learn JavaScript, don't get it twisted though. JavaScript, if you learn Node, you've got a backend language there too, and you've got a full kind of JavaScript stack. So you can definitely do that, or pick up another. Kind of look in your area. I don't know where you're based out of, Aces, but if you look in your area at the jobs that's being posted for developers, web developers in specific. Okay, you're in Massachusetts. That's the words I can't say. You're in Mass though. So take a look at the job postings up there, whether you go to I don't know what the job, Indeed or Stack Overflow jobs or Monster.com or whatever it is, and take a look at what the like Faded said, he's talking about learning Ruby on Rails after JavaScript. Take a look what's prevalent in your area. If you want to work there locally in your area, look at what those job descriptions are asking for. So like I know for Vegas, if I wanted to learn a backend language, the two big backend languages that are going to get you work in Vegas is Java and C#. Those two are very prevalent all over the Las Vegas Valley. A lot of the casinos will use C# and Java, and a lot of the other companies, Java's a big enterprise language. So, for example, Zappos.com, which started out as a shoe selling online business and blew up into this whole clothing apparel selling business. All their back end stuff is in Java. Allegiant Airlines I used to work for, all the back end there is in Java with the middle layer in PHP. So just take a look for your local market. There is no one right answer. If you're out to get work, you need to look at what's local to you and what they're asking for, and then target those things. For example, if I were to learn Ruby on Rails here in Vegas, I would be a Ruby on Rails developer with no work because there's not a lot of places here in Vegas that's using Ruby on Rails. So you've got to know your local market at the same time. So do your research there. That's something you can look up today. Just start looking up, type in web developer and wherever your town or city's at, and look at what the job postings are asking for. So, and then you can start targeting those technologies. Whatever you start seeing the most should probably be the first thing you should target to be able to, if you're out to get work and get work quickly. So that's it there. Boom, boom, boom. All right, I think that's it, man. I think that's all the questions. We are just about an hour. I think I'm gonna call it right there. If there ain't no more questions, cool, Ace. I see you, and I'll talk to y'all later, man. I'll see if we can start doing these more often. Maybe every day, every other day, something like that. So I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.